alone in Wicker Street again. The first thing Mara noticed was that Wicker Street remembered her before she did. She stepped from the taxi into the same thin halo of sodium light she'd left behind 10 years ago, and the scent that struck her old peat and the yeast from a bakery that had closed felt less like smell and more like an address being stamped onto her chest. Houses leaned the same way, their bay windows like sleepy eyes. Somewhere, a music box played one fractured lullaby that seemed to come from no single house, but from the air between them. Number 27 welcomed her with a brass knocker she thought she would know by touch. The metal was cold and pitted, but it answered with the same hollow note. The door smelled faintly of lemon soap and dust. On the mat sat a tiny folded paper boat, its creases patient and precise. Someone had written a single word inside: stay. It was not a demand, more like punctuation, an invitation attached to the line where history clipped past possibility. Mara pressed her palm against the wood and tried to tell herself it was only nostalgia. Neighbors appeared in fragments, shapes behind net curtains, and a figure who lingered in a doorway across the street. Mr. Hale stepped out from shadow like an old punctuation mark, holding a paper cup of seeds. He had the kind of attention that was never loud but always present. The porch light he left on, the way his gaze collected details the way a jar collects flies. He said her name as if testing the fit. Back here, he murmured, not surprised. His voice was folded into the rhythm of the street, and for the first time, Mara felt observed, as if she were a returned book on a shelf. That night, the house made small noises that could have been pipes, or could have been memory trying on different shapes. The attic breathed, the banister sighed under an invisible weight. Through the frosted bay window, Mara glimpsed the silhouette of a tall mirror she didn't remember owning. In it, the room looked almost right, except the reflection tilted slightly late afternoons out of time, and the version of Mara there did not move when she did. It was a minor betrayal, enough to make her drop the spoon she'd been holding and stare at the stillness like a wound. She found the music box in a drawer with other things that had belonged to no one she could place: keys without locks, a single child's marble, a pale moth wing pressed like a page. When she opened it, the lullaby was smaller than she remembered, like a voice on the far side of a door. She couldn't tell if it was playing because she wound it, or because someone else had begun it before her return. Each note made the room a little narrower, as if sound could compress space and memory at once. Days collected like coins in a pocket, simple, jangling, too many to recount. Wicker Street continued to offer tiny, unnerving consistencies, an origami boat on her windowsill, the porch swing creaking on a windless morning, the street lamp humming as if impatient. When she asked neighbors about other empty houses or about the lullaby, answers curved away and returned as questions of tone. Do you remember it the way it was? Someone asked, and Mara realized none of them answered honestly, because the street did not hold a single story. It held a chorus of misaligned ones. At night, the house grew patient. Mara would wake to a soft scraping at the window, like something learning how to trace the glass. The pale moth returned, flattening itself against panes as if to listen. She began to collect the little notes she found, the single words folded into boats and left in predictable places. Listen, remember, leave. Each was written in a small, careful hand with an ink that had browned as if it had aged in the atmosphere of the street rather than on a shelf. Their existence made her feel less alone and more watched. Once she followed a sequence of notes that led the length of the street. Each paper boat nudged into a drain, tucked beneath a doorstep, pinned to a fence post. They arranged themselves like breadcrumbs in a language she almost understood. The path ended at the base of the crooked street lamp, where the moth sat, wings spread, and beneath it lay the last note. Answer. The word felt less like instruction than like a key. Mara found herself speaking back into the hush, a small, useless syllable that echoed and came back slightly altered. The attic mirror refused to be explained. When Mara climbed the narrow stairs to it, every step sounded as if someone else were counting beside her. The glass was clouded with the faint residue of other faces. Her reflection wore the same coat, but hesitated a heartbeat later. She reached up. The mirror did not cool beneath her palm. Instead, it hummed, a low, almost animal purr from its frame, like the street lamp's note mutated into wood. In that pause, she understood that the house could keep echoes and return them rewritten. Mara tried leaving and found the street resisting patience. Maps rerouted themselves in her hands. The taxi driver remembered the turn he had never before taken. Once on the bus, she felt the lullaby in the hum of the engine. Once at the station, the pigeon that landed on her shoulder carried a scrap of old music paper. Wicker Street was not a town she had returned to so much as a name she had spoken aloud and caused to look her way. The more she tried to disentangle herself, the more the town folded its questions into the seams of her life. On the seventh night, she woke to conversation in the house, not from people, but from the rooms. The kitchen sighed and answered the hallway. The stairs clicked in time with the rhythm of a distant clock. Following the sound led her to the parlor, where impossibly, a row of small chairs sat arranged as if for an audience. Each chair bore a folded note. When she opened them, the words were not single commands, but questions. Who stayed with you? What did you forget? Do you intend to leave again? They felt intimate and invasive at once. She met a neighbor on the stairs who stopped and asked, gently, if she had always been brave. The question folded around a laugh, and a tremor she couldn't tell belonged to them or to her. The neighbor's eyes did not search for details so much as expect them, the way people expect stories to have endings. Mara realized she had been collecting other endings like trinkets, places to pin down a version of herself. The street did not want her to be fixed. It liked the negotiation of return better than any finality. The last note she found was tucked beneath her own pillow. It carried a new word, choose. Outside, the street lamp hummed an answer like a low chord, and from somewhere down the row of houses, a porch light clicked on and then off as if someone else had answered in kind. Mara stood with the music box in one hand and the stubborn brass knocker in the other. To leave might be to allow the street to close its mouth. To stay might be to accept being held in a place that rearranged recollection. She sat on the porch swing and for the first time tried listening without pleading. She did not make a dramatic decision. In the smallness of the porch, she let the music wind down until its last note was a memory of a memory. Notes kept arriving, but they shifted tone, as if now someone else was learning how to speak into the margins. The attic mirror continued to hold a version of her that resumed motion a beat later. When the street hummed, it sounded almost affectionate, not cruel. Yet affection in a place that remembers too accurately can be its own trap. Mara learned to leave a window cracked and a note folded into a boat every morning, an offering, an experiment. The ending, such as it was, remained porous. People walked down Wicker Street and kept their ordinary lives, but sometimes, late and half awake, someone would find a folded boat that asked them a quiet question, and they would answer in their heads. Mara found comfort in the cloud of not knowing. It maintained possibility. On her last evening, she stood once more at the lip of the street and heard, from the direction of the attic mirror, a sound like recognition. She pressed her palm against her suitcase and let the street have its memory, aware now that memory, once given a home, might prefer to visit